gentlemen, everyone around and in between. It is DebateSensei, NPDA edition, where we talk about things relevant to National Parliamentary Debate Association, competitive debate in that particular format. I have with me Paul Villa from Diablo Valley College. He is the man in charge of NPTE, basically. Thank you very much, Paul Villa, for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jared. I loved the intro picture of me. It really captures kind of my essence, you know.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Oh man, like I as I was cropping it and stuff like that, I had a big old smile on my face because it just, yeah, it did. I'm like,
there's a solid 10-year period where every picture of me is just like
nice. Oh man. And so okay, so tell me a little bit about your role in NPTE. What are some of your responsibilities?
Sure. So right now, officially, I'm the webmaster of NPTE, and the main thing, other than the website, which we're working on, and actually should finally, fingers crossed, be up in the next few days here because we've sort of pivoted in our approach to doing it, is the rankings. And so I'm the person who is in charge of all the rankings. I'm the one who does all the data entry for all the rankings. I helped, with the help of Sasan Khosravi, set up a spreadsheet that does all the calculation for that. And we've talked to some other individuals, some members of the community who are in computer science about potentially getting a sort of automated process set up, but it's kind of weird because FTN does things differently than Tabroom does things. And so we have actually a system where FTN would be like pretty much automated, but we want to make sure that we have everything fully to go. So yeah, I'm a board member of the NPTE Executive Council as of last year, along with some other folks, and I just do the rankings and website currently. And so it's been a big undertaking to get the website. Surprisingly difficult to get a website up that does the things you need it to do.
You're also an alum of NPTE, yes? I was looking you up. You have a really short LinkedIn. Now that picture, I'm like, wait, do I have the right person?
Yeah, it was like a pre-old man beard. As I called it. Yeah, I competed so I competed for Diablo Valley College initially before I was really on the competitive scene. And then I ultimately went to the University of the Pacific and kind of competed in Parley and LD there, but mainly did the Parley thing for a long time with my debate partner, Dallas Phillips.
All right. Got all the way to Sems in 17, I saw.
Yeah, I was a two-time national semifinalist.
Really?
I made 4th, 3rd, and 5th place, I believe, are my NPTE finishes. So a little worse than you, but it was a good time.
Well, I mean, I got a really good opportunity in that last year. So
my claim to fame, it's not actually claim to fame, it's my shame. Every single team that eliminated me from nationals won the national championship.
Oh yeah.
Every single year.
Yeah.
And it's just like great.
Yeah, we had a couple of those, right? Yeah, I look back on mine, I'm like, man, I got a lot more second place than I got first. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's like
just happy to be there, it's just
yeah. You know, you gotta humble yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I love what I'm looking at on the rankings. The spreadsheet is, kind of mirrors what I remember for a long time. The old website is just gone. Is that right? Or
yes. So essentially, the majority of infrastructure for both NPDA and NPTE was being handled by Zack Schneider, who was a national champion in the NPTE. And he tragically passed away in an accident a few years back. And it was so sudden and everything that everything went with him, right? So he was the one who hosted the website that had all the videos. He was the one who was making the NPDA and NPTE sites and the rankings and everything. And I mean, it honestly just goes to speak to like the importance of like a single person and like institutional memory and stuff, because it's been really hard for us to sort of recover since that moment. And you and me have talked about this a bit, but I mean, try finding videos of NPDA tournaments today. Back then, after every tournament, someone would upload one or two at least. So we're in the process of kind of recovering something like that at the moment. But Zach was a giant who like made everything possible. So.
Hey, like, man, I would love to help. Honestly, you know what I mean? I do a lot of website work myself for it. And this whole proto communications thing, has, so I'd love to help. Anyways, but This year's NPTE is cool because it has, you know, really awesome information. Before we get into like individual people, I always liked taking students to the NPTE website and looking at the top people and just showing them their win percentage.
Yeah.
Just give them a realistic sort of measure of, because they think that, you know, if they lose 2 rounds out of 6 that they're, you know, it's like, oh man, I got to step up my game. It's like, no, look, it's totally fine, you know.
Well, you know, the NPTE website used to show the top 50, right, on the first
Right.
page, right? And when
Yeah.
I was at DVC, I remember my only goal, like my only goal in life was like I need to be on the front page. And
Nice.
senior and junior year, we were rank 1 for a while. We finished rank 2 both years, but that was something that when we came to sort of redoing this NPTE process and thinking of it, I was like, I want rankings up like tomorrow. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care if we don't have a website. Like, I want kids to be able to see, like, here's what the top people are doing, and oh man, how's this? You know, how is these sort of relationships playing out between this team and that team? And you know, it's very interesting. And we're trying to, like I said, eventually get to a place where we have a lot of the old functionality. Because one of the things I loved about the old NPTE site was you could see a team's entire career record on top of just their season to season record.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's going to be a minute here, but as far as like actually managing it this season, it's been pretty awesome. And like as the like sole person doing all of the data entry, it's been neat for me because obviously I have to look through the results and kind of keep track of what's going on and sort of. I'm a big fan of like narrative in debate, like in the same way sports, right? It's like, oh, where did this team come from, and like what was going on with them, and like what was their story over the course of the season, and how are kind of dynamics changing as we head into nationals shortly here because we only got a couple tournaments left before we get to the big dance.
Okay. This episode is a part of that, right? Like I'm glad I get to do this. So one of the other things, so like if you I actually took the top 20 and I averaged it out, and the average prelim win percentage is 75%. So you win 3 out of 4 and you're the best in the nation. You know what I mean? But then I looked at it and I'm like 7 out of 20 have it below 70%.
Yeah.
There, you know,
well,
it's like
this is I tell my students this. I every once in a while when my students really start getting into like competitive technical debate and whatnot, as opposed to just the CC style stuff, and there's a few of them every year who kind of do that. I draw on a chalkboard, whatever the biggest chalkboard I can find or whiteboard I can find is. I'm like, I draw a continuum that is like, here's the day 1 novice, and here's like the national champions. And I sort of go along and I'm like, okay, here's someone's first day of open. Here's someone who can break an open. Here's someone who can, and so on and so forth. But the reality is, if you're asking me like straight up, I was thinking about this a lot last night. I think there are, at the absolute maximum this year, 6 teams that have any chance of winning the national championship.
okay.
And I really think if we're being like teams with greater than 50% or so, there's like 4. Because debate has always been very top heavy, right? The best kind of 4 teams every year are really the ones who win every tournament because we all kind of go to the same circuit events and whatnot. And it's like, unless you're competing regionally and earning those points, which I was definitely guilty of when I was unless you're doing that, like you're gonna run into these real unbelievably good teams, and like if they're a little bit better than you, they beat you like every time. I don't know. Do you ever play Quake? You know what Quake is?
I know what Quake is, but I've never played.
So Quake was like a first person, one of the first person shooters,
right?
And the famous thing about Quake is that it has no like comeback mechanic. So what I mean by that is, if you're losing, you just keep losing. There's no like, oh, get the blue shell, and now you knock. There's none of that.
Yeah.
Right? And so in Quake, if someone's like 5% better than you, they don't beat you 55 to 45. They beat you 99 to 1 because they're just in. And I think debate's kind of like that, where it's like
really
those small differences between the very top teams. They show up and they just crush everyone over and over and over.
Yeah, so that's a type of presumption, actually, that I think people don't. I don't know. We start to get into debate theory here, though. But presumption means one thing in debate, but I think it means more, and that people realize. And that's one of them. It's like when you walk into the round, who's winning?
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
you got to know that. And so,
there's a lot of theater. There's a lot of theater going on in these rounds. You know, I think it's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, so we have official standings now, whereas before, like me and Gabe, in the first half of this season were, estimating. I was getting his expert opinion on it. Now, you told me that episode was cut in half. I went and looked. I have the full recording. I'm going to be able to release it. All right. I don't know what the hell happened there, but that's a little embarrassing. Luckily, we only have 3 viewers. So,
Yeah.
all right. Tell you, one of them is my mom. Let's go through top 10, but I don't want to cut it off there because I'm looking at number 11 and I want to give you a shout out there. Congratulations, Diablo Valley, number 11. All right. Tell me a little bit about Hitomi and Seini.
So DVC is on a very different track, right? Because we are in almost every single year always preparing for Fire Pi, right? Fire Pi is kind of our national tournament. Like if we can go to nationals for Parley, we do, but like, budget constraints and stuff.
Right.
So Hitomi and Seini are Emily and Sem, who are the 2 top competitors on my team. And the thing is, I think they only did 2 tournaments together, maybe 3 tournaments together this semester, because we're always like kind of mixing and matching, because the sort of reality of a Fire Pi is you don't need your 2 best students to compete together at it if they're both like pretty good, because they don't go to a true champion, right? Like if Fire Pi was like NPTE and NPDA, like you'd have to keep debating and teams get better. Right. But at tournaments that only have 2 elims, you just need your team to be good enough to win 2 elims. And so we actually ended up splitting Emily and Sim apart, because I'm like, well, why don't I put them with my 3rd and 4th people instead of together, and then have a higher average score. But Sim and Emily are Sim's in her 2nd year on the team, her 2nd full year, and she's hoping to transfer, I think, to Berkeley. I think if she goes there, she'll do what the Berkeley people do and kind of crush everyone. Emily is actually, this is her first full year, just was like last week. She joined the team last February. But her older brother, Matt, was on the team years ago, and he was a national semifinalist and like a Mile High finalist. And so she's kind of got that legacy thing, and she's trying to figure out where to go. I think she'll be back next year. But, the bottom line is that, being completely context, true to context and whatnot, we've mostly been to sort of like the regional NCAA style tournaments. And so within our region, they're like pretty good. They would probably be the best or 2nd best team overall, with the Pacific team that's right above them actually being probably the only team that would really contest them from our region. But I think our numbers are a little inflated in that sense, right? Because I think if we had to debate like the real hitters out there, it'd be a problem, which is exciting because the next tournament that we're going to, our regional championship, my understanding is Brenna and Tristan, who you see at the top of that list, will be there. And so I've been telling my kids, I'm like, look, you're going to find out. I'm like, you're going to find out exactly how big the world really is. And I know it's been great to be this big fish in this little pond, but there's a lot of stuff coming. And so, as far as my kids, I think that, we've been, bottom feeding, so to speak, and have been very successful bottom feeders, but I don't know that we're of the same caliber as a lot of the teams that are sort of in that area on the rankings, to be completely honest.
Yeah. All right. I also want to acknowledge the next highest community college on there. That's my alma mater, El Camino.
El Camino.
On number 13. So we got. I saw OCC is on the top 20, I think.
Yeah.
So got a few community colleges representing in the top 20.
It's one of those things where because I'm obviously the person who follows the rankings, I've kind of been looking into the OCC and the Elko team. Gorlinsky from Orange Coast Colleges, I believe their name is Hunter Gorlinsky, if I'm not wrong. And sorry if that's not true, but they, as far as I'm aware, they're the person who won Bavaro Tabor last year at Fire Pi, which means that they're not just doing their debate thing, like they're out there doing speech, and then they're honestly, they were the Bavaro Tabor, for those of you who don't know, is like the #1 top speaker at the Community College National Championship. And then the Elko team has been very interesting to me because I'm always looking at who we're gonna have to debate at Fire Pi and put on there. And honestly, like if I'm just being completely honest, looking like sort of like resume of what tournaments they've broken at, I would say that as of right now, they've been a little bit more competitive at more competitive tournaments than we have. I'm pretty sure that they've their win rate is obviously really good. We're looking at 12-2. But they've been advancing at tournaments where the field's pretty legitimate, where there's been some of those top teams at them. And so, hats off to them. I would say that for sure they've got, probably a good argument for being the best community college team right now.
Okay.
KCC is further down the list. They're the only other team I'd put in there. Win rates lower, but they have gone to nothing but killer tournaments. And it's like,
Oh, okay.
what do you do? Do you favor a team that beats the
Yeah.
people in front of them, whoever they are, or do you favor a team who doesn't get all those wins but is going against the best of the best? So it's always
Yeah.
fun in the community college game to kind of see where people are floating and see what maybe the next generation will look like, in terms of debaters. Because as I mentioned, Brenna and Tristan used to be DVC students, and when they were at DVC, all they wanted to do was go to the NPTE and the NPDA and prepare for that. But they also had to go to state and to Fire Pi, and they won golds there. And Brenna was also Bavaria Tabor, and so a lot of people I think overlook kind of that state Fire Pi track, but some of those people go on to be the very best debaters in the country. So I'm always excited to see who's going to be there that year.
Right. All right, let's hit the top 10 here. And at
Sure.
number 10, we have your alma mater, University of Pacific.
Yeah, and so we're looking at Angie and Danny here from University of the Pacific. And so Angie is a senior and Danny is a junior right now. Obviously, they're from Pacific and from my region, and so we see them a lot. Earlier, I mentioned I'm like Sim and Emily, probably the second best team. That's because Danny and Angie are just always there in finals, beating up on us.
Yeah.
They just beat us this last week into the tournament too, and so I think that their struggle has really been similarly converting at these like blue chip events. When they go to certain national tournaments, they're able to get through. You know what I mean? They're able to get through on the national circuit and make it to Elam. Sometimes they even sneak wins against teams that in theory they don't have any business beating. But when they're in our region, they just clap everyone. Like they just absolutely beat up on all the rest of us. And so that's been good for them. It's been interesting because Danny she started doing debate last year, but she was a speech person primarily. And so she's really only in her second year of even doing debate. So I'm excited to see kind of how they finish towards the end of the season. I definitely think they've been improving over the course of the season. And I think to a certain extent, one of the things Pacific has going for it is they do LD too, right? And they go to these big LD tournaments. And I think that sort of difference in approach to debate and how LD, like you kind of really have to think about your collapses ahead of time. You have to be more preemptive of what other people are going to do. I think that sort of forces you to approach all forms of debate a little bit differently. And so I would predict that Danny and Angie probably break at both nationals, but I don't know that they'd get much past the sort of first E limit if I was having to guess it right now.
Yeah. My year, we came in ranked number 2 and we hit number 1 several times. And it does seem to kind of even out at the end. Everything, all the stats and stuff like that was always kind of fascinating to me. What's it?
The other thing is the target on your back, because if you're one of those top 3 teams right now, you're the ones everyone is preparing for heading into NPDA and NPTE.
Right.
And everyone's thinking about what Ks do you read and what theory do you read and how can they sort of approach the debate and tailor their strategies to being successful against you. And so it definitely gets harder. Towards the end, right? The level, like you're saying, sort of the gap, regardless of skill level, closes just because the prep can be so tailored. Like if you're the number 1 team in the country, you're not preparing for a number 10. You're just open.
Yeah. The next 4 slots go to Texas teams.
Yes.
Rice and UT Tyler.
Yeah, so if we're looking at Rice, Renteria, and Surya, Renteria is Max Renteria, and Max is a NPDA national champion from 2000 and I guess it's 22. I think 22 is the year that Max won. So the year that Oregon won NPTE, they went to NPDA and they went 8-0 in prelims, and Max and his partner went 4-4, but broke. Like they were one of the only 2 4-4s that broke. And then went on the most insane national championship run of all time, from like the bottom seed in elims to beating the best team and the team that just won, and they just beat everyone on the way out. And they just won out.
I remember seeing that in the brackets. I'm like, wow. I do remember.
And so I rate. I don't know Max's partner nearly as well, but I've seen Max debate a number of times, and I rate Max really high. And Max is also a very high speaker point getting student historically over the years. And I do think that makes a big difference at these national tournaments.
Okay.
Because it tends to be that the students who have the best ability to sort of resolve competing arguments and explain things do a lot better, independent of sort of their speed, because the thing is, most of the year, if you're a really good team and you debate a team that is not as good as you, you're going to win because they dropped an argument somewhere. They dropped some argument that is in-game nonsense and you can just go for it. But in these very highly contested debates where everything is answered by both sides, the question becomes who can resolve those competing claims and sort of get across the ballot. And I think that Max has been successful in that historically. Who knows? I would say outside chance here that they're definitely one of the teams that I think in that sort of top 6 has the ability to take home a win this year.
Okay.
So that brings us to 8, which is UT Tyler, Hurtado, and Stansbury. And this is a team that I've been very interested in this year and have no personal experience with whatsoever.
Okay.
I've never seen them debate. I've only asked sort of students about them and whatnot. Because it theoretically, right, in the A/B team paradigm or whatever, which I don't know that I subscribe to, but theoretically they are the B team at UT Tyler. And as sort of a primer, UT Tyler is coached by Joe Provencher, Joe Pro as we call him, and I think and have thought that Joe Provencher is the best Parley coach in the country for about a decade.
Oh, wow.
Now. And UT Tyler, there's something magic down there, whether it's a system or it's just talented students coming from Texas because they have such a strong policy scene or whatever. But UT Tyler has over the last 5-6 years regularly produced a team that is in national finals, and it's been different teams, and they had one team that was in, it was either 3 or 4 straight national finals. They didn't win any of them, which is unfortunate, but I mean, you don't make the big dance that many times over that many years. Last year, they were the team that was in national finals against Brenna and Tristan at the NPTE or NPDA, and they lost. One of the teams did, the one that had Josh Smith on it. It was his partner's gone now. But the bottom line being that every year they're liable. Someone at UT Tyler is liable to make a run to semis or finals. And given that I don't know Hurtado Stansbury, and I do know more and have seen more of Josh Smith, and I've seen even around with their partner here, I think that this is one of those teams that I would put in my top 4. Like if I was saying the top 4 teams that have a shot to win nationals, I think Herrig Smith have a real shot.
Herrig Smith.
They have a lot of things going for them. One is that Josh was obviously in national finals last year and was in national semifinals last year. This year they were in 1/2 of Mile High's finals, and you have to be in those big rounds if you're going to have a shot at nationals. You have to be used to debating the best teams at the biggest tournaments in front of the best judges. And honestly, it's even less so that you have to be used to that moment. Judges have to know it's okay to vote for you in the national final round.
Yeah.
They have to know that you're not just some Cinderella story or whatever, but that you are there and you've been grinding, you've been competing. The other thing is, I don't want to say they're Herrig, I believe the first name is either Ann or Anna. I apologize because I just don't have the data in front of me right now. But they are so damn fast. They have ridiculous policy chops, like just ridiculous policy chops. And so, from talking to Brenna and Tristan, when they were in Mile High finals, they read 10 off against them. Like legit 10 off. And like that's unheard of. And so when you have the ability to do that to a team, the only teams that can stand up to you are the other very best teams, right? Who don't get flustered by that. And so I think for sure this is a team that's liable for quarters minimum, more likely a semis. And so UT Tyler, I would almost, pencil in one UT Tyler team will be in national semis if I had to guess.
Okay. UT Tyler never had a team that I remember when I was going through it. Rice just started NPDA, for a few years. They weren't at the beginning of when I started, but when I went to Long Beach, I started seeing Rice around.
Yeah.
So, now they just have they have a number 6 as well, Knockvey and Stanek.
I think if you would ask before this year, what are the 3 best schools to go to if you want to try and win a national championship in Parley, the answers unequivocally would have been in order: UC Berkeley, Rice, and UT Tyler.
Okay.
Now this year, as we'll see when we get to the top, Whitman has put their name in that entry. But coming back to Rice, so this is the other Rice team, and I have seen them once this year. They here's the interesting thing about Rice, and if you were to look up and down the rankings, you'd see this. They've been kind of mixing and matching this year. If you look up and down the rankings, you're going to see a lot of these sort of same 5 students' names in different partnerships.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And so the Rice folks, I don't know if it's just been availability or if it's been working
Oh
through
yeah, I'm
partnerships,
looking down
but
at number 36 is Stanford and Stanek.
yeah, so like, 45, 43, 36, like 24, like yeah, and so on and so forth. And so they one of the advantages that Rice has going for it this year, which is an advantage we'll talk about for Whitman, is they've got at least 5 or 6 kids that are top level, right?
Okay.
They've got a reign or not a reigning, but a former national champion in Max, and then 4 or 5 other students who are just diligent about competition and who go to all these big tournaments and who have been very successful. At the, if I'm not mistaken, towards the beginning half of the year, sort of the fall semester, there was a little more dominance coming out of Rice. They were making a lot of these semis and making a lot of these finals, and so that's been good for them. I think that one of the problems that Rice has run into and will likely continue to run into this year, just based on my observations of Rice teams this year and over the last several years, right? Debating against Rice, coaching against Rice, all these kinds of things, is that the top teams are so good at theory, like
Mm.
just so good at theory, and that doesn't seem to necessarily be a wheelhouse for Rice. And it's not something I historically associate with Rice. Like if you ask anyone, Berkeley, very theory heavy team, and I do wonder if these Rice teams have the ability to get across the line against the teams that I consider the actual top four in that sense. And I think the other problem for Rice is that, like I said earlier, if you were asking me who's the best team in Texas, it's Herrick Smith. And
Okay.
it's not like these folks aren't at all the same tournaments. And
Right.
I
Right.
think that if you were to ask me head to head, I probably do go with Herrick Smith over any of the Rice teams. But definitely, if you were like a dark horses for me, dark horse meaning you're still one of the 10 best teams of the country, but not that top four. I think one of the Rice teams could definitely make an appearance in the finals this year.
Okay. Okay. Let's jump to Whitman, and then we'll handle the California schools last.
Sure.
So Whitman, they were. Am I right? Were they closing out tournaments earlier?
Whitman, the first 2 tournaments of the year closed out both tournaments,
Right.
which is
Right. And
And,
and that's reflected here, right? Like that's probably
and just for context, Whitman also they were in national semifinals last year of
Mhm.
the NPTE, and at NPDA, I think they were speakers like 2 through 4,
Mm,
top speakers. So they have 4 seriously high level debaters on their team.
okay.
And that's a big deal. As I was saying earlier, like when you are arguably the best, second best, third best team, at a minimum, 2 of the 4 best teams in the country go to Whitman. And if you can just debate one of those other best teams every day, every weekend, or whatever, you're gonna be very legit. You're gonna be very good because you have those good sparring partners, and it makes a huge difference. Um, like you said at the beginning of the year, if you only took a snapshot of the fall semester and you predicted anyone but Whitman winning nationals, it'd be a very difficult argument to make.
Right. Right.
They were winning or closing out essentially every tournament they went to. They had beaten Brenna and Tristan from Berkeley, the reigning national champions, at those first 2 tournaments of the semester, right? And if I'm not mistaken, that the 28-1 you see there, the 1 is Whitman.
Mm,
Uh, and so Whitman had beaten them a few times, and clearly this is a highly skilled team. I think that they're probably at worst they are the 3rd and 4th best team in the country. Most likely they're somewhere between 1 and 3. Like their floor is the 4th best team in the country, and
mm,
I think that they have a very legitimate chance. If you ask me right now, anyone who's going to beat Berkeley this year, it could be Whitman, and just
okay.
about that's it. I think the 2 Whitman teams, I think that UT Tyler team, and I think basically no one else has a real shot.
Okay.
More than 5%, let's say.
Yeah. That's man.
And I've
Seeing them.
seen both these team debates, and they're legit. They're
Yeah.
legit at everything. Their K debate is fantastic. Their theory debate is very high level. I've seen a little less case debate from them,
Mm,
and that is potentially a concern because NPTE's changed a little bit. People defend the topic more. People defend the topic more at NPTE when they're writing their papers and whatnot, and so are writing their files rather. And so, can you have a case debate? Can you have a case versus K debate? as opposed to a K versus K debate. I think
Right.
all these matter. And when Whitman did lose in semifinals at nationals last year against the other Berkeley team, though the one that we haven't talked about yet, Banerjee and Carrillo, they lost in a straight up affirmative versus K debate. And then when they just had the Gasky tournament, they lost, I believe, against the straight up affirmative as well. And so, can you pull that off? Obviously, they can do case debate at a very high level, but against the other teams, do you have the case debate in your wheelhouse? I think is a very important question to be answered.
Right. Okay. Okay. That leaves our 3 California teams. Concordia University, Irvine. I was, am I just forgetting? Like, who is this?
So Concordia last year made a national semifinals run, but it wasn't both of these debaters.
Okay.
And so this is, if I'm not wrong, it is Benjamin Wagner and Hudson Winchell. I
Okay.
saw Benjamin Wagner at the first tournament last year in Open at GGO, and I wrote on the ballot, I was like, I'm very interested in following the rest of your career. I think you've got a lot of talent,
Mhm.
and I'm interested in kind of seeing where you go. And so I'm not super surprised to see them up here. I will note that Concordia is not necessarily attending the highest of high level tournaments, right? And so
Okay.
I think that they're sort of in that same position as kind of the Pacific team, where it's like, well, when they debate against anyone regionally, they are more or less crushing them. They have had some national tournament level success, but I think that, like, if we're like, one of these teams is not like the other in this top, 8 area or whatever, I think Concordia is probably maybe the most like overinflated team. And I could be wrong about that. Again, this is a team that had a national semifinals run last year, and Concordia has been competitive for a number of years. But I just don't think if we put Concordia in a debate against the 2 Berkeley teams, against the 2 Whitman teams, against the Rice teams, the UC Tyler teams, they're favored in any of those. I don't know that they'd be favored in any of those. But against a lot of other people, they've got a really good shot. I mean, you don't go 15-3 against anyone unless you've got some serious skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, anybody in the top 20, well, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Because I'm looking at overall number of rounds. That's the first thing I start looking at. Like, like, no offense, you go 5-0. I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But you still reserve a little. Like, I'm not looking
Oh,
at
of
that.
course, yeah.
You don't
I
look at
think anything less than 3 tournaments is useless, and I think that
yeah,
until you've hit 4, like my kind of thought process is, if you haven't been to 4 tournaments, why?
yeah,
Like, I don't, at this point of the year, like there's 2 tournaments left. You haven't been to 4 tournaments, then I can't really judge you based on one event. Like, anyone could go 6-0 and win a tournament.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we got Berkeley at number 5 and at number 1.
So let's start with the rank 5 Berkeley team. So these kids last year closed out NPTE with the other Berkeley team. They beat Whitman in semifinals on a 2-1 decision. I was the 1, so that's my bad. Sorry. And this is a very good team. This is a very, very good team. And the thing they have going for them, similar to Whitman, is the best, in my opinion, the best team in the country are their teammates. And that Berkeley every year has basically the best prep room in the country. And so when you've got kids who've already done it, who've already won nationals, regardless of sort of the circumstances surrounding the size of NPD and stuff, and who did it as like freshmen, so I'm pretty sure they're like sophomores now. That's a killer team. That's a killer team. I have, talked to them every time. I've seen them debate, and I've talked to the other Berkeley team because they're my former students. And I have been especially impressed by Banerjee in the debates that I've seen them do. I think that their sort of selection of what matters in the debate has been very high level, and I think that at nationals matters more than almost anything else, because you don't tend to be like spread out or like out teched or whatever. If you have a strong rebuttalist who can really figure out the questions in the debate that need to be answered, you're going to be in a really solid spot. And so I think this team absolutely could win nationals this year, and absolutely will be national semifinalists or somewhere thereabouts, most likely. Could be a closeout again, frankly.
Oh,
Very, very, very good team. Right in my top 4 with Whitman and the other Berkeley team.
right. Was that just last year?
It was last year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as freshmen.
Oh,
Like I
okay.
mean, they're going to be killers for a long time.
Yeah.
No one's going to have fun junior senior year with these two.
Yeah, that was man, I when I go talk back to my days, I feel like Al Bundy. I'm like, I scored 4 touchdowns in one game, right?
Yeah.
So back it was Mike Owens who did that, and he was my opponent in the final round as well. He
Wow.
won NPDA as a freshman.
Crazy.
And then yeah, it just was dominating for 4 years. And closed it with winning NPTE and NPDA. So yeah. Let's talk about the top seed here.
So I could not be more biased. These are my former students. They're like, my favorite students of all time, essentially. Like very, very close, excellent relationship with these two. There was a Reddit post in October where a kid who also comments on your YouTube videos sometimes was
Okay.
like, who are the best schools in the best teams in NPDA college debate? And I was like, it's Brenna and Tristan,
Yeah.
like a gap.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of other people, they're the Whitman teams and so on and so forth, and the other Berkeley team. And they're like, well, I don't know, Whitman just beat him at the first 2 tournaments. And I was like, I will bet my life. I'll
Yeah.
bet my life that at the end of the year. And so Brenna and Tristan are the reigning double champs. They won NPDA without losing a single round. They won NPTE, and the only round they lost was against the other Berkeley team, where they just debated each other and did like a silly, goofy round.
Okay.
And they were top 2 speakers at NPTE. Brenna was top speaker at NPDA. And then in the fall, they lost to Whitman, right? And that's legit. Like Whitman beats them in national circuit competition. But something I know is that every year of their life that I've been around them, Brenna and Tristan somewhat phone in the fall. They've gone to 4 total tournaments in the last 2 years in the fall. They just go to like Rice, they go to the first 2 tournaments or something, and then they don't compete again. That's partially because Tristan has a life and does a bunch of other things that aren't debate. And so they get it together usually come the spring. With that said, this spring, they have not lost a single round and have only been to the hardest tournaments.
Okay.
They've won every single round. They won both halves of Mile High. They won Concordia. They won Gasky. They have won 33 straight rounds. And they've lost 1 prelim this year. And the reason that I think it's so important, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, I suppose, but they most recently in the Whitman-Berkeley matchup, they were able to win it. And so I think that if you're just picking favorites, you have to pick the reigning champions if they're as dominant as they have been this year. And I see no reason why the final round won't be Cyrus and Keene against one of these other teams. Probably Whitman, maybe Yushi Tyler, outside shot at Rice. But I think that that's what we're looking at in national finals this year.
All right. All right. Well, a very comprehensive look. Thank you so much, Paul, for helping give some narrative to just a list of data as well. All right. So we will be back next time. We'll be talking about the Gasky final round for a little bit of analysis. I'm Jared Kubica Miller. I'll see you then, everyone. Thank you so much, Paul.